sending that breath now to any particular place within our physical body that might need a little bit of attention. Relaxing our brow, our shoulders. And to knowing that as we open our heart and as we open that which is our infinite capacity of self-awareness, that we receive exactly what it is that we need in our gathering this evening. It is so beautifully particularized for us that we delight and joyously accept the gift of a reunion of calm, of clarity, of good that nurtures us. And we give gratitude for this gift already, and for this time and this collective, delighting in the perfection and the beauty of life. And breathing in collectively and in harmony and in rhythm together. We take it very deeply in, and we allow it out, and we say, and so it is. Amen. I think oftentimes when we talk about listening, we think about human listening. Human listening meaning using the instrumentation of our ears and sort of cultivating a relationship with the sound waves and noise of the earth plane. And tonight I want to take you on a little bit of a different direction with listening, and that is the listening from that place that is your soul. How many of you are familiar with Paramahansa Yogananda? Do you know that wise saint? He's the author of the autobiography of a yogi, a true master, a true siddhi within the Hindu faith and the Indian saints. And he had a song that he used to sing. And did you know that Yogananda had a song that he used to sing to his discipleship? And it would go, listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. And the instructions with that was that he wasn't singing those words as it was coming from him, but that he was singing the song of the soul. And that the soul sings that to you and I, the collective one. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. So it's a beautiful introduction to consider that we have this ability not to necessarily listen from the human plane or the human instrument, but to listen from that which is the heart. And as you can begin to kind of play around with, well, how do we do that? What are the mechanics of listening from the heart? It's a beautiful way to consider. Actually, this came to me when I was talking to you all on Sunday about being in the cave with Sambhari Baba's space. And another image came to me while I was there, and it was of a doorway. Like if whatever room you're in, just glance over and look at the door frame. And you see that the door frame has measurement, right? It has a little bit of limitation. And that door frame and that measurement and the perceived limitation is kind of the way in which we interface with the world. And we're all pushing and shoving, trying to get through the doorway. Because our perception and our belief is that on the other side of the doorway is the there that we're trying to get to, is the answer to the prayer, is the clarity of the issue, is the longing and the seeking that is within that that space within us that simply just wants to go home. And by going home, meaning going back to self. And so we all internalize that and interpret that through the action of, I got to get there. And so what we do is metaphorically, some of us physically are pushing. We're pushing to get someone else out of the way. We're pushing to get there before the supply runs out. And so when you think about energetically that we're doing that 24/7 in the consciousness of being human, in the limitation and the density of being human, that's the way that we're groomed, that's the way that we're taught, that's the way that we've been domesticated, that we have to get there. And so it's the thing of, well, I'll relax when the kids are grown and out of the house, or I can relax when this particular thing is paid for. I can relax when I'm out of debt. I can pause and be happy when this particular diagnosis is managed. You see, we do this. And so there's always a there. There's always a futurizing. And that's what kind of exists in our minds on the other side of that doorway. And as I was sitting in the cave, I could just see the backs of the heads of everyone, like humanity trying to push to get through the doorway. And I was in the back, and part of my my exercise and part of my practice is to just be a witness to my own thoughts, more of which I'll talk to you about this today as well. But witnessing the fury, the fervor of trying to get to the there. And I know that you and I have always heard the phrase, there is no there. But I want you to stop and think about how we're all a part of the action of trying to get there. Like, what is your there? What is the thing that is paused in this moment that keeps us locked into a thought? It's just a thought, or a belief. It's just a belief that something is unfinished and that we are disconnected to the heart song, to the thing that will never leave us, to the thing that will never forget us or forsake us. But we're still trying to do that, right? So some of my examples that I get caught up in is in the world of the nonprofit, fundraising. Did I say fundraising? And this idea that if we don't meet this metric, if we don't do this thing, and so there's a false sense of urgency that comes with that. There is a striving that can come with that. There is a disappointment that can come with that when goals are not met. You understand? And so we all have versions of that. And so whether we realize it or conscious of it or not, we're trying to get there. So I'm just watching this energy trying to shove through this doorway. And it was just watch it. Just watch it. Don't participate. Just watch it. And so as I began to watch, that which was the measured doorway on either side of it began to dissolve. The people were still trying to get through that frame, but there were no walls on to the left or to the right of the frame. But everyone was still trying to push to get through that particular frame. And the guidance was just to continue to watch. And suddenly, even the frame of the doorway dissolved. But the people, the collective, were still pushing in this very narrow way to continue to try to get through that space, that portal, to what they believed was there. And it felt really revolutionary in that moment, that the idea of there is no there, that all that exists is what is now in this present moment. And it reminded me a little bit of an Emma Curtis Hopkins quote. Are you familiar with Emma Curtis Hopkins? She is a renowned metaphysical teacher. Her nickname is she was the teacher of teachers. So she actually was a teacher of the Fillmores. She was actually a teacher of Ernest Holmes. And the dissolvement of that frame reminded me a little bit of her. And I found this that I want to share with you. Let's see if I can get it. I'm not losing my skills. My skills are here. There we go. Okay. Can you see this? So Emma Curtis Hopkins said that the world will persist in exhibiting before you what you persist in affirming the world is. Isn't that fabulous? Look at that for a moment. The world will persist in exhibiting. So exhibiting meaning showcasing, meaning will feel real, seem real to you and I. It will exhibit that all of the trappings of that doorway. The world will persist in exhibiting before you what you persist in affirming what the world is. And so as I was reflecting on that and thinking about that, I realized that our day-to-day existence is one extended curriculum of looking at where we have exhibited or believed that there is a doorway and that there is a there. And by taking that in, and this is the part that's kind of fun, is that there is no goal of trying to get rid of that, because that's baked into this being human. We will always be there with our calendars and our appointments and paying taxes and raising families and going. There will always be the dual journey of being human. But the miraculous spiritual mastery of being human is, how do we remember that there is no there? So it's not about you and I escaping this small r reality. It's not about turning our backs on being human and being involved in the world. But it's about, how do you and I develop in such a way? And maybe develop's not even the right way. How do we shed in such a way that we come home to the idea that what we have been seeking and what the there we have believed to be, because the rest of the world thinks it's there, has always been here. Does that make sense? And so,
can you say that? Can you say that again, David? I was taking notes when you hit that.
I have no idea what I said. It's the idea that be in your humanness. Adore being Audrey, adore being Janet and Linda. You are in that incarnation for a very particular, exquisite, genius reason. And so it's not about trying to get away from that. It's about honoring that and allowing ourselves to be still, even within the madness of all of the human dynamic of competition and dualism. And it's not something that I've been able to do overnight. It's a step-by-step process. And I thought it would be really fascinating to tell you how I'm failing, so that you could begin to see that this is an ongoing thing. So Georgia was in the news yesterday. If you have your pulse on all things politics, My county that I live in is the preeminent county in these elections that tend to bring everything to this kind of photo finish. And in my neighborhood, every single day when I go walking, there are 2 opposing yard signs for the election that just happened. And those signs have been up since even the first election back in early November. And so I found myself getting caught. Every time I'm walking around in my neighborhood and I saw a yard sign for this opposing candidate, I did not have nice thoughts about those people. And I would look at their house and I would look at that sign and I would go, how in God's name could you remotely even advertise that you would elect this person? I'm just being fully transparent about how ugly my thoughts were about this. How seduced I was in a multitude of the layers of the there. So for example, the fear that if this person gets elected, here are the repercussions. And so then that takes me off out of the now into a whole fantastical narrative of doomsday scenarios. And then coupled with that is, David, how could you have such horrible thoughts? After all this time and all this work and everything that you have experienced, how could you let a yard sign reduce you to such, dare I say, violent thoughts? But there they were. And then yesterday we stayed up late to watch the results. And it was well after midnight here. And there was momentary relief, but there was also this feeling, this dumbstruck feeling, because we had record voting in my state of Georgia, record voting, that close to 2 million people would have voted for this other person. And I couldn't sleep last night because I was observing and I was watching my particular thoughts about the seduction of the dualism of separation, and that I was actively participating in this. And this is I'm gonna try to take you as linearly as possible in this breakdown. But I will say, coupled with that, these types of things keep getting very much highlighted in my thoughts, because I've been writing a book about non-dualism for several years. And every time I think I have my pulse on what it is that I want to say, the universe throws it back at me and goes, oh, really? Do you have that? Really? Really? Is that how you got? And this is just one major example. So it's been a very long process. But when I say about non-dualism, I'm talking about the fact that when you and I and our respective New Thought movements say, and you've heard me say this before, there's only God, how do you bring integrity to that? Because here I am, a professed teacher, walking around my personal neighborhood, now looking at them and solidifying and concretizing a very deep divide of separation. How dare I then on a Sunday go before a live audience or on this thing and then talk about oneness when I am not bringing integrity to that? And that's not anything new. That's been ongoing. And I've often shared of late that as far back as 2016, I was standing on the pulpit, and it was yet another Sunday and yet another tragedy and yet another diversion from a planned talk. And how do I talk about oneness to my community when I'm really tired and I'm really angry and I'm really at my wit's end with regards to what's my role here? And as I'm speaking, and the words are coming out of my mouth about the absolute nature of God, even in the midst of suffering, I could hear this external voice go, David, yeah, really? Do you believe that? And I battled until it said, do you want to believe that? And I said, yes, with my whole heart. And then the voice was like, do you really? And I was like, yes, I want to believe this at my core. And I will tell you from that moment on, by saying, yes, I want to have a tangible experience of the absolute nature and perfection of God, that everything from that moment changed. All worldviews and all solidifications of what I thought were solids were not. Relationships dissolved, left the job, went on my particular path of trying to uncover everything. In other workshops that I believe I've even had with you, I've divulged a little bit about the road that took me on in terms of shamanism and healing and dissociative trauma and all of these things that came up. But that journey kept leading me to this pivotal knowing that everything is not as it seems. Let me say that statement again. Everything is not as it seems, including people and personality. And in the peeling and stripping away of that journey, I began to look at everything that I had labeled the enemy, everything growing up in poverty, growing up with a rageaholic mother, growing up with a father who died at 7, finding out the greater extent of that poverty. And in my quest to say, yes, I want to know wholeheartedly with full integrity that God is all that there is, being gifted to this date, the greatest gift I've ever been given. And that was to see in that realm, in that particular multi-dimensionality, the perfection of everything and how it all came down. It's a hard pill for us to swallow when we are stuck and pulled into the walking in our respective neighborhoods and looking at the things that we deem a threat. It's a hard pill to swallow when we haven't had other experiences that have taken us out of the density of this singular experience. And yet here I am confessing to you, even having had that experience, I still got pulled in. The ebb and the flow and the rhythm of the knowing and the not knowing, the remembering and the forgetting is still very much a part of being human. And the ironic or paradoxical thing about what I'm telling you is that in the past, my self-judgment would have been so off the chart that the acting David as the actor trying to act the part of a spiritual leader, would have only perpetuated a deep-rooted sense of toxicity and shame. But having seen what I'm describing to you, this multi-dimensional experience, that this is just the plane of form, and this is the stuff that happens in the plane of form. And you and I, we're all gonna be dragged into the ebb and flow of remembering and forgetting. So the point is not that I had these horrible thoughts about the people who had these opposing signs in the yard. The point is, can you just witness the fact that you had the thoughts and love yourself? Period. Can you go, like standing at the doorway, trying to push through, can you just witness the fervor and the fury and the fear and the clamoring, trying to get somewhere else? Can you just witness it and not identify with it? And I realized that I hadn't. I realized that all these months that I've been walking my neighborhood, every time I turn the corner and there's that sign, I do this internal battle with my judgment and my self-imposed separation with the narrative of these people. And yet we're doing that every single day. And so here's one thing I think, and I'm going to share it with you, and then I want your feedback from this. So two things. One is, and I believe I've shared this before too, is that insanity is trying to force a singular dimensional answer to a multidimensional experience. Probably the biggest revelation that I had during our shared COVID experience. Insanity is trying to shove or force a singular dimensional answer to a multidimensional experience. What does that mean? That means that when we don't realize that there's no doorway there, there's no there, that well-intentioned people, we will try to apply a singular dimensional answer to something that is beyond answering in this singular dimension. Meaning that there is far more to you and far more to me and far more to what meets the eye than we understand if we don't begin to consider and allow ourselves to explore what multidimensionality means. Who are you? You're not just Connie or Janet or BJ or Denise or Mary. You're a soul who is expressing as this, in this minute circle and exploration that is part of 1,000,000 times of what it is that you and I do. A student went to the Buddha and they said, "Oh my God, I'm so tired. How many times do we have to do this?" I believe that was the original translation from the actual transcripts of the conversation with the Buddha. The student said, "Teacher, how many times do we have to do this?" And he said, "I want you to imagine a dove with a silk scarf in its beak, flying over a rock that is 1 mile high, 1 mile wide, and 1 mile long. But the bird only flies over the rock every 100 years, and it gently caresses the rock with the silk scarf in its beak. You and I will be doing this until the rock is worn away." So that can kind of give you an idea of infinitude, or the depthness or the inexplicable nature of this thing called life. And how many times you and I have been a part of this unraveling and unlearning. And now here we are, and we're talking about not something that is sequestered to this particular dimension, but now we're talking about a metaphoric doorway. And we're talking about the energy that we participate in unconsciously that produces suffering and anxiety and trying to get at something. And we can look at that and go, oh, that means that what we've done is we have invoked a multi-dimensional awareness into this finite form of this plane of form. You see? It's not like you and I are an engineer and we've gone up literally to the door frame and we've beaten on it and we widened it so more people can get through. We've looked at the energy of thought and belief, and now we are applying it. So I'm looking at the energy of thought and belief and going, every time I go for a walk and I see that sign, what does it do? The language might be, oh, it's triggering me. But really what it's doing is it's signaling me. You're sequestered in the single plane of form, David. In the multi-dimension, it's a divine pattern. It doesn't mean then that I don't vote, I don't get involved, I don't advocate. It means that in my advocacy, I am bringing a wisdom that is not pushing at the systemic issue, but is bringing vision to what wants to be revealed in this plane of form. Did you follow that? Insanity is you and I doing the same thing in the plane of form, forcing something to try to get there, when really there is no there. The there is here. And what you and I are is already everything that we have craved to be. How do we experience that? We learn to listen then from our heart rather than our human mind. We begin to come home to the mastery that is there. And we listen to our heart's song. And the heart says, I will never forget you. I will never forget the immensity and the beauty of what you are as a soul. And I will never forsake you. What does that mean? It means that I will, the I am, will never let up bringing us home. We think we're being triggered, but the I am is like, no, just trying to signal you to remember who you are. What's one of the best ways for it to signal to us who we are is to show us the opposite of something so that we can begin to go, oh, okay, thank you. So a trigger is this word that means that something is poking at a wound. A signal means something that is directional, that is trying to guide us back. What if everything that we've labeled as a trigger is nothing more than a signal? What if everything that, again, like I even said on Sunday, that is a perpetrator of our grief is a master teacher trying to get us to not be sequestered and trying to get through that particular doorway? And I will never forget when I was studying and reading some of the lives of these Indian saints, even topics such as politics and elections came up. And Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji, who was the guru of Ram Dass would get so hyperactivated about politics. He hated Caspar Weinberger. He hated Caspar Weinberger so much that he put a picture of Caspar Weinberger on his altar, on his puja, right next to Buddha and Jesus and Yogananda and Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba. And every morning when he went to his prayers, he'd go, hello, Buddha. Good morning, Yogananda. Hello, Caspar. He would use that because he knew that that was a part of the path. The obstacle is the path. We can talk a big game, but if we're not willing to envelop and bring all of that in, then we're missing out on the quantum leap out of being seduced by the limitation of form. So I went out today, even in the rain, and it probably doesn't have as much impact in telling the story because my guy won, but I still went and walked through the neighborhood, even in the rain. And when I saw the opposing thing, I kind of paused and did a little forgiveness exercise. And I wanted them, those people, their realm of beliefs, to also have joy, to also feel connected. And that's the beauty of a trigger. That's the beauty of flipping the script. That's the beauty of not everything is as it seems. That's the beauty of listening from the heart instead of listening from the noise. of this single plane of form. So it's listening beyond that which is the surface. And the last thing before some questions here is, so when I say plane of form, I want you to really understand what I'm trying to explain here. Earth, human, this is form, right? I had you look at your room during the prayer. All of this is form. This is a what? A plane of existence. The chief characteristic of this plane of existence is the plane of form. So part of the plane of form then means what? Dualism. Through the eyes, everything is over there, I'm here, you're there. Everything is I believe this, you believe that. So the plane of form is wrapped up in complete dualism. Us, them, past, present, big, small, poor, rich, worthy, unworthy, you name it. The list goes on and on and on. All of the characteristics of dualism is what you and I came in to participate in. Even though what we are is non-dual. Even though the very philosophy that you subscribe to is a philosophy of oneness, of non-dualism. And yet here we are. Do you see the dynamics of this, right? So for you and I to subscribe to, like I said that day, I'm talking and I'm in a completely different space as I'm talking to my congregation that day. And I said, yeah, I want to know. I want to know with my whole heart. And you know why? Because this dualism is too painful. It's painful. Trying to get through that doorway is so painful. And so a bodhisattva is someone who gives their whole life to helping alleviate that suffering. Whether it's tangible goods and services, feeding people, housing people, living by example, teaching. Every one of us is a bodhisattva in some way to help alleviate the suffering of what? This plane of form. You and I have gravitated to a philosophy that is a pathway of helping alleviate the suffering of dualism. But here's the kicker. I used to think that if we all worked hard enough, then it would go away. And there would be this sort of utopia. And my partner and I were in India, and we were looking at some pretty horrific situations. And we had this discussion that it's one thing to be a bodhisattva and to help alleviate suffering, no matter what form you come across. But it's another thing to understand that in the plane of form, there will always be yin-yang. Did you hear what I just said? That means then that dualism is baked into the curriculum of being human. And it's interesting how we hear and absorb that, because by hearing and absorbing that, we might go, well, what's the point then? Let me check out. Let me get out of this human plane of form. If there's no escape from the yin yang. But the true mastery is is that even in spite of the yin yang, the paradox is that even though that is a part of the human curriculum, we are willing to move our own devotional scale to the percentage of that which wants to alleviate the suffering in whatever way we can. Do you see the power in that? So acceptance, this word acceptance that we often will kind of play with, the acceptance that this world, like Hermeticism. Hermeticism has all these principles, and it says one of the principles of Hermeticism is that the world is mental. It's based upon mentalism. The world revolves around rhythm. The world, this principle of life contains cause and effect. And so there's all of these different things. And so baked within these principles is the understanding that there is polarity. And polarity is a perfect example of the yin-yang principle. And it will always be, because it's a quote principle that is confined to this particular plane. So when you and I, all we have to do is look at human history and see what? Our inhumanity, our rising and falling, the yin-yang, the ebb and the flow, the victory, the loss. And so what becomes so vital with regards to shedding the limitations of being human is that the more that you own your soul in this human plane, the more the alleviation of that suffering can take place by those who are in the bandwidth and the influence of our offering. So it's the very thing of Mother Teresa saying, and I know you've heard this story too, no, I won't go to a march against war. But if there's a march for peace, I'm there. It's that thing. It's realizing that when I get in touch with how do I uplift rather than push against, that I'm beginning to understand that in spite of the yin-yang and the principle of that, I commit myself to help being a lighthouse, a change agent, terra firma, something that has reliability that is beyond just the limitation of this plane. And that is listening from the heart. So I'm going to stop talking and see how confused I've made you.